Would you like to come and join us?
It's more fun down here.
So can I have a mover and a seconder to bring this meeting to order? Coughlin, Ritchie. That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater, July 5th, 2017, come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. So I'd asked everyone to stand for the national anthem and remain standing after we're complete, and it's going to be led tonight by Councillor Loston, who's returned.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Ask you to remain standing for a brief moment of private reflection or prayer. Please be seated. So I'll go to council. Does anyone have a disclosure of pecuniary interest in any of the matters that are on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll carry on. And we have a deputation from Roy Monk on behalf of the Midhurst Hall Board. Please come forward. Yes, you may. So when you have a seat, Mr. Monk, maybe you can both introduce yourself, because I'm not sure the people at home can actually pick you up on the camera. So introduce yourself, and then Natty can introduce herself.
Good. Hi, my name is Roy Monk. I reside at 14 Luella Boulevard, and I'm here representing the Midhurst Hall Board. And my partner here in crime is Nadia Diamici. She's our person that collects all the money. Good evening, Mayor French, council members, staff. As acting chair of the Midhurst Hall Board, we would like to thank the council and staff for approving the long-awaited Midhurst Pavilion. Conversations with Ron Belcourt indicate that he estimates that the contract for construction will be awarded by the September 6th council meeting. Therefore, we are looking towards mid-September for a sod turning media event, which you will all be invited to. We would like to see the tennis pavilion project and the Midhurst Pavilion be constructed in the same time frame. This would release the citizens in the area of Doran Park from having a longer than normal construction season. We are looking towards a large opening celebration based on discussions with Ron Belcourt has had with various contractors. Construction of the structure most likely will won't start until next spring, If all goes well in the spring, it could potentially be completed by June of 2018. Therefore, we would look towards June as our celebration. Maybe we can tie the opening of 2018 to our soapbox derby. And that kind of reminds me of something. I want to show you the picture of the winner, my granddaughter.
Good, I was going to have you qualify that, but you've already done that.
I'll turn that around so everybody can see what it's like to be in a winner.
The winner's circle.
So, again, we thank you for making this happen. Questions, comments?
Okay, I'll turn to council. Any questions or comments to Mr. Monk? Councillor Hannah.
Mayor French, and on behalf of the residents in Midhurst and all of Springwater, I want to thank you and Mrs. Diamicis and all the members of the hall board and all the residents who helped us with the fundraising. The support of staff and the support of this council is going to make this happen, so thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I have a resolution to accept the delegation. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hannah, would you like to move it? Seconder? Councillor Ritchie? That the delegation from Roy Monk on behalf of the Midhurst Hall Board be received. All those in favor? Carried. So thank you very much for the hard work, and I see the excitement in the community, and let's make it all happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
So we're moving on to minutes and get it on the table. I have a resolution that the minutes, items 6.2 through 6.4, be approved as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Ritchie? Coghlan? Any questions? Councillor Hannah? Okay. So moved by Ritchie, seconded by Coghlan, the minutes of the council, item 6.2 through to 6.4 be approved as presented. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, now we're moving on to minutes of boards and committees, and I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the table. Coghlan? Austin? That the minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations, items 6.6 through to 6.9 be received as information. Is there any of those you would like to pull? Councillor Hannah.
I have a question at 6.7, the library board minutes.
Is it a question, or should we pull it, or maybe pose the question?
It's just a question at this time, Mayor French.
And pose the question, please.
My question is to do with the point in the minutes where it states that Councillor Coghlan reported something to do with the remuneration of the Library Hall Board, and the Library Hall Board is generating a letter to the RAC Board, and I'm just curious, being on the RAC Board, I don't know what it's about, and I know Councillor Coghlan's on both of those boards, so possibly we could get an explanation from Councillor Coghlan or the Director of Parks and Rec, who's also on Parks and the Recreational Hall Board as well.
Maybe I'll go to Director Belcourt. First of all, yeah, I didn't notice that, but I wasn't sure what that meant. Is there any comment you may have, maybe for clarity, because it does show up in the minutes?
Thank you, Your Worship. My recollection of the discussion that took place wasn't an agenda item or anything. It was one of the RAC members questioning why she had received a payment from the township, thinking that she had been volunteering her service. And then she found out she was actually receiving remuneration for that position. And there was just general discussion about different committees that received remuneration, but there was no information presented or discussed at that time. Not me.
I guess maybe as a follow-up, it's just that it suggests there's going to be some letter. Is there a letter then?
We have not received a letter. I did have a discussion with the CAO or the CEO of the library and the library chair regarding what had taken place, and I have not heard anything since then.
So, Councillor Coghlan, if you'd like to fill in any blank?
Thank you, and thank you for jogging the memory. It was conversation that happened, I believe, at RAC, and the suggestion was that members of the library board received $80 in remuneration versus the $40 for RAC, and I think that's what the question was, and it was that members of the board, library board, do not receive $80. So I think that's what the clarity was that they were seeking.
Follow-up, Councillor Anna?
I don't want to get into the debate, but I guess if that took place and the Councillor Coghlan who's on the RAC board.
Do you want to put your mic on, please?
And Councillor Coglan's on both boards, possibly could have corrected it at the time. It would have saved the staff, the library, and having to generate correspondence. But I appreciate the information. Thanks.
Okay, any follow-up?
And thank you. And had I known what the remuneration was for each board, I apologize at the time. I didn't know with certainty what everybody was paid for being there.
Okay, so you've heard, okay, so moved by Coghlan, second by Austin, the minutes of boards, committees, and other organizations, items 6.6 through to 6.9 be received as information. All those in favor? Carried. And now I turn to question period. If anybody has a question about something on the agenda, we prefer that, but we're open to any question. Just come forward, identify yourself, and pose the question, and we'll see what we can do to answer it. Okay, seeing none, we shall carry on. In correspondence items, I need a mover and a seconder. Hannah? Austin? That correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.4 be received as information. Any of these you want to pull for comment or question? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Now we'll move on to action reports, and there's a number of planning matters here. And again, we have a request for a public meeting. I need a mover and a seconder for a public meeting. Coghlan, Hannah, and I'll just read it so we know what we're doing here. The report from planner regarding ZB-2017-011 Ben Oaks, dated July 5th, 2017 be received. That a public meeting be scheduled in accordance with the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13, as amended to gain public input on the proposed zoning bylaw, and that subject to the comments received, that the bylaw be approved and subsequent to the public meeting by council. So is there any questions on that? We're just asking for the public meeting. All those in favor? Carried. And again, another request for a public meeting. I have a mover and a seconder, and this is for the Yanch. Coghlan, Austin, and I'll just read what the resolution will be. That the report from planner regarding ZB-2017-012, Brent Yanch, dated July 5th, 2017 be received, and that a public meeting be scheduled in accordance with the Planning Act, RSO 1990, CP 13 as amended to gain public input on the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, and that subject to comments received that a bylaw be approved subsequent to the public meeting by council. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Carried. And this one is a site plan agreement. Let's get it on the table. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin, Coghlan. That the report from the planner regarding SP-2017-003, 1315050 Ontario Inc., dated July 5th, 2017 be received, that a site plan agreement for proposed new multi-tenant commercial building located at vacant land on Yonge Street South, roll number 4341030006159902, be drafted. The mayor and clerk execute the necessary agreement once all technical aspects are addressed to the satisfaction of the township solicitor, township consulting engineer, and staff. So is there any questions on this? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to the Director of Planning. I noticed that the property in question, work has already been begun. Like I noticed that trees have been cut and some work has been done at ground level. Is that the usual sort of thing to have some things already starting before the site plan is approved?
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Austin. Normally, planning staff would like to see the reports go forward before any site works are done on the property. Based on Township's discussions with the property owner, we understand that trees have been removed, and that's the extent of the work that's going to be done until such time as the site plan will be approved. It's my preference, it's staff's preference, that any work on the site wait for site plan approval or any required agreements. However, there has been work done on the property, and we've been advised that no further work will occur until the site plan has been approved and finalized.
Okay.
Maybe as a follow-up to that, from your perspective, has there been any trees that have been removed that may have been requested to be retained in the site plan? Just a curious question.
Through you, Mayor French, or thank you, Mayor French. As far as any trees, because we don't have a catalog of where the trees were or anything that inventories where they were, it's really difficult to comment on that. What I can say is that as far as the site plan approval process goes, there will be requirement for landscaping and some plantings to try to soften up the site through this process. And as I said, it's one of those things where the preference is usually to have agreements in place or something in place to show what the extent of the work is and to deal with mitigative measures on the site if the site sits vacant and clear for any time.
All right, any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to the next item, talking about scheduling public meetings. And I need to move it in a seconder. Coughlin? Allen? I'll read the resolution. That the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding scheduling procedure, public meetings, dated July 5th, 2017, be received. That Council directs staff to facilitate the combined approach, option 4, as the standard procedure for scheduled public meetings in the township. And maybe just for the edification of anybody that might be listening in that, maybe Director Spagner just kind of give us a brief overview of what we're trying to do here to save time and expedite things.
Thank you, Mayor French. This report was actually the result of two things: a comment coming from one of the members of council at the last meeting, and also direction from the CAO to look into this matter further, to try to look at efficiencies when dealing with the scheduling of public meetings. Historically, the process that's in place would require council's authorization to schedule a public meeting, where, as per the Planning Act, that type of authorization is not necessarily required. The purpose of the authorizing reports is to provide council with an update or with information that goes on an agenda so that there can be comments and questions through the process, and to give the public an idea of what types of applications are coming forward. What staff has found is that on many occasions, these types of reports really do become transactionary, in that the public meeting is going to be held. That's the opportunity for questions and answers. But at the same time, there's really, from a processing standpoint, no need for them to be on a council agenda, because there's other means of communication to keep the public apprised and council. So the purpose of this report is to look at alternative options for council's consideration when dealing with scheduling of public meetings. In the report that's before council, there are 4 options that have been noted. The first option is the status quo option, whereby reports would continue to be on a council agenda and require authorization prior to staff scheduling a public meeting. The second option would require an information report that would go on the council agenda. It would provide council with the information. It would provide the information to the public on a council agenda, but it would not open up any means of communication or discussion with respect to actually scheduling the public meeting. Staff would, in that case there, just move forward as per the scheduling process to schedule a public meeting based on volume and based on schedules for when dates would be available. The third option would be a memo to council. Currently, staff prepares memos, internal memos, which outlines the specifics of applications. It goes into the same detail that are currently provided within the authorization reports that council sees. However, it's circulated through email. The disadvantage to this is that the public would not see any of, say, the more wider spread or applications that have a wider public interest. And then the fourth option is a combined approach where there's the opportunity for an information report to go on a council agenda for the wider spread public applications that have a wider spread public interest, much like subdivision approvals or official plan amendments. Those types of applications would be, an information report would be presented to council, put on an agenda so that the information was made public. In instances where there's more minor applications, the suggestion is that an internal memo could be circulated around the council so that council is kept in the loop and has the opportunity to ask staff of any questions prior to the public meeting coming forward. Staff is recommending option 4, which is the combined approach. Based on one of the other efficiencies that was approved with respect to the zoning bylaw amendments that are a result of conditions of approval, staff have taken into account that approximately 46 reports since that time have been saved, and that other efficiencies can be provided to provide staff with additional time to deal with other planning matters. As part of this process, there's still reports that go to council with all the information, and there's still the opportunity. It's just a matter of how council wants to be informed of these applications before they come on stream and before we get to a public meeting. I'm open to answer any questions that council may have.
Any questions, Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor French, and excuse me for blocking you out, but the sun's blinding me. I don't know if this is the appropriate time or should be in future considerations, but I have had this conversation last council or last planning meeting. We do a number of planning meetings to discuss in-law suites. And I think historically we've always approved every one of them. They're consistent with the province, county, and I think our policy to make affordable housing available for folks. I believe it's a requirement possibly under the Planning Act that we have to have public meetings for in-law suites, but if not, if there was some way we could alleviate having to have those meetings and just send a registered letter to the residents that would live near the affected properties, if they have no concerns or complaints, we could skip having that public meeting and just rubber stamp it, if you like, and approve, which we seem to do anyway, unless there's a complaint or concern. And I would think it would save staff a lot of time, and it would be consistent with the efficiencies we're trying to accomplish here tonight.
Director Spagno, do you want to comment generally? Because I think that's the direction we are going.
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Councillor Hanna. Through the official plan review, the municipality is going to have to take a look at second units. In order to have a more efficient process, if you will, what will need to happen is there will need to be specific criteria that will have to be identified through the official plan process to identify when it's appropriate to have a second unit or an in-law suite. Until such time as that is incorporated into first the official plan and then the zoning bylaw, the municipality has to go through a Section 34 Planning Act public meeting to actually change the zoning bylaw to allow for those particular uses. So I appreciate the comment, and it is something that we are going to work through the official plan amendment process and ultimately when we have to update our zoning bylaw. But it's a little ways down the road, and unfortunately at this point in time, the required process is a zoning bylaw amendment, which requires a public meeting.
Thank you. Any questions about the suggested procedure. Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you. When the report now comes as information, will it have the date of the public meeting so that when the public is reading it, they will know when they could be coming?
Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor French, through to Councillor Coghlan. At this point in time, I don't want to commit to putting a definitive date in that report. It's only because, based on volumes of applications that we have, we're not sure when particular applications are going to actually move forward. We might be able to give a ballpark or a range, but we wouldn't necessarily pinpoint a specific date, because you might have applications, for example, official plan amendments and subdivisions, where you might have one application where you want on one night versus putting a whole bunch on one night where you're going to overload, council and the general public with some of the more complex files. So the expectation would just to put everybody on notice that this is coming forward, and it would identify, of course, the circulation distance and those types of parameters as well as far as notification goes, but I don't really see us putting a definitive date as to when the meeting would happen.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Hannah?
I assume from staff recommending option 4, that's the one that council is going to support. I haven't heard any other discussions on that.
It sounds like we are in agreement unless someone is to the contrary. Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on, this is awarding of a contract for the Elmville Lift Station. I need a mover and a seconder. Austin and Allen. That the report from the Director of Public Works regarding the award for design, tendering, and contract administration of the Elmville Lift Station expansion be received. That the award for the design and tendering be awarded to Ainley Group in the amount of $142,140 plus HST. And that the contract administration and construction component be awarded to Ainley Group in the amount of $180,000 plus HST for a total award of $322,140 plus HST. Would you like our Director Coleman to give us a quick overview and then open to questions? Maybe that would be the best way of doing it. Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor French. In November of 2015, Ainley Group was awarded the RFQ, which at that time included only the Class EA process. In the last year and a half, they've been working away at that. They've reviewed the various options, come up with a final option. We've been through the process, and now it just seems most effective to continue on with the same group to continue with the design and the tendering and the construction of it.
Thank you. Questions from council? Councillor Austin?
Through you, Mayor French, to the Director of Public Works. Ballpark figure idea of when the construction might begin?
Director Coleman?
I think the goal at this point is for construction to begin in the spring. They'll have to go through the design process, obviously advertise it, tender it, and close it and whatnot, so it should be in the spring before that begins.
Does that answer your question? Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. No.
I know a lot about this stuff.
Yeah, our question period was a time to ask that question. The next one is a resolution regarding our kind of golf tournament attendance policy under items for future consideration. And can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the floor? Councillor Ritchie, Deputy Mayor Allen. I'll just read the resolution and what the options are. The report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding golf tournament attendance policy, items for future consideration, dated July 5th, 2017, be received. The Council's event policy remain as the policy governing attendance at events like charitable golf tournaments, or the Council directs staff to amend the existing policy or create a new policy as directed. So open to Council for any questions or comments. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor French. I brought this forward in items for future consideration so we could get a standard policy that we could all work from. I attend a lot of golf tournaments. I've gone back through all my expense accounts since, well, I don't know how many years I went back. I think since I've been on council, and I can only find once where I claimed an expense to go to a golf tournament. So it's not a major financial issue for me, but I just wanted to make sure we had a consistent policy so we're all doing the same thing. So somebody isn't claiming and somebody else is not claiming and so on. We just need to be consistent. And I suggested in the past that, excuse me, if you're the mayor, for example, or you're representing the mayor, then maybe it should be 100% paid for the registration fee only, because we have to reciprocate. And people sitting at home probably wonder, well, why are we using tax dollars to go to golf tournaments? But if we don't go to golf tournaments that are held by other municipalities and support them with their fundraising, then they won't come to ours. So I think we have to reciprocate. That's one of the motives for this. But I think if you're going to attend it and you're not representing the township as the mayor, then possibly we should only be claiming half of the cost of the registration. And I'm just looking for clear clarification on how we're going to do this moving forward.
Okay, maybe I'll go to Director Schmidt just for some clarification, because we did put a budget amount in for kind of training and education and conferences and that. We put a certain amount in for each counselor in our budget. And I think there was some discussion at that time, if it's to the benefit of the township. And we do have kind of reciprocal arrangements, and we share services, especially with our immediate neighbors. I can think of examples with Asante and Wasaga Beach and from time to time. So they seem to be very appropriate. But maybe I'll just go to a direct question, Director Schmidt. For the allowances that were put in the budget for each of the counselor, could they be tapping into that as for attending golf tournaments if they like to?
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to members of the council. Correct, there was money set aside in the 2017 budget for, I think specifically, training and development and conferences. I wouldn't suggest that it's necessarily for attending these types of events. In addition to that, though, there are additional dollars in council's budget. There is the mayor's fund, which it has approximately $3,000 assigned to it, as well as there's a council fund which was increased in the 2017 budget to $3,000, which provides essentially $500 per council member, excluding yourself. And so that would be an area whereby if council wanted to use those funds to attend these types of events, that might be an area we can do so.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. And I agree that the $3,000 that's set aside, to start from there, because I do agree that whether it's a golf tournament or a charity event that we're at, someone from Springwater should be there. We should be represented. We can't expect people to come and support our charities if we're not going to do the same. When I receive an invite from a calendar, like we got one today for Wasaga Beach, that if there was a policy that if we're invited to it as a member of council and someone wants to go, it's going to look heavy because there's probably only 3 of us at this table that like to golf. So whether or not you attend every golf tournament or only one, to me it doesn't matter who it is, as long as Springwater is being represented there. I think that it's a benefit to everyone in the municipality. So I don't know if we need a policy that says if it's an event that comes forward through our calendar or approved by whoever it is, you should be able to submit your expenses for it. I think that that policy exists now. If we need something specific for golf, then I'm not sure that we do, because it's an event. So I think that we can continue the way that we're operating.
I guess, following up on both your comments, I guess the direction Councillor Hanna's looking for is, because we do have these funds available, specifically outside of the training and conferences, if there's events that are coming up and people who do want to attend and represent, then I think the real question is, should the full cost be submitted? I think is your question, Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor French, and, excuse me, I think Councillor Coghlan is also correct. For example, say we all wanted to go, that'd be 7 people representing the township. Would that be seen as being heavy-handed to ask the taxpayers to pay for 7 people to attend that event? However, if it's an important event that we should all go and would benefit from and would help our taxpayers by being there, then possibly yes. So I think everything has to be judged on its own merit. I was just looking for some consistent policy on how we're going to submit this stuff going forward, so we're all on the same page. And I don't want to get into all the history about where we paid and haven't paid for things. So just some clear direction is what I'm looking for.
No, and maybe following up on that, you know, I think in my discussions, I think it's appropriate for us to be very supportive of our immediate bordering neighbors when it comes to charitable events. Let's not even call it golf, charitable events, because we do have reciprocal arrangements. And in those cases, I mean, if it's a golf tournament, to me, it would be a maximum of 4 for a foursome, because that's what they are, not 2 foursomes. And of course, under the existing policy, I can go or designate someone, so that one's not an issue. So we are talking about 3 from this other pool of money. So is that the kind of concrete direction you'd like to have, is that up to 4? And for the immediate, give me some input.
I guess I'll just go back to my earlier statement. I think if you're the mayor and you're going there, or somebody's representing the mayor, 100%. Anybody else going, if it's 50%, because even though you go to the golf tournament and you're there to benefit the township in some respect, you're also enjoying the day, and so maybe you should be paying for half the enjoyment yourself. That's my suggestion, but as Councillor Coggins pointed out, we have a policy in place, and as long as we're all happy with the current policy, that's fine.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, through you, Mayor French. So if the township determines that we're going to support other golf tournaments, which I support completely because they're coming to ours, then the councillors who attend that, that doesn't get drawn from the 500 allocated to each person, is my understanding. That's over and above. And I think it should be up to the discretion of yourself and the mayor to determine which other golf tournaments we sponsor, and then we should just use this previously approved 500 allocation for what it was intended for. And those are events or that councillors determine help benefit their position.
Councillor Coghlan?
It's my understanding that 500 allocation is what creates the 3,000 that's in there, so it is the same pot.
Yeah, it was 6 times 5 because mine has a separate budget. So, so we do have funds in there to do charitable events. So we've kind of covered some of it, and I'm not sure if we have to make reference to it, but I think we're pretty clear in our budget consultation that that's what it was for. So you have, effectively, you have $500, so for the sake of argument, it's probably 3 charitable. So I guess our current policy may work. Councillor Hanna?
And I'm happy with that. It's just that I think we've all sat here saying we're going to be open and transparent, and I think this is one way of doing it. So folks at home, and when they see me at golf tournaments, they don't realize I'm not there on the taxpayer's dollar. I'm there paying for it for myself. However, if I'm representing the township, then I may or may not claim if I choose to.
And I think that's probably the appropriate guidance. If you want to go just play golf, that's fine, but if you want to represent the township, then we have access to that $3,000. Were you going to comment, CEO Brindley?
Mayor French, just to confirm, at this time, we consider them sort of corporate events at the discretion of the mayor, and the mayor can choose whether to attend and also the attendees, and usually at the most is a foursome. But I just want to assure the audience, this is actually, we probably spent more time talking about this now than we actually do during the course of the whole year, and it's only usually once or twice that we try to reciprocate with either Wasaga Beach or ESSA or one of our neighbors, and matter of fact, we don't go to all just because our schedules don't allow us to go to all. But I assure you, it's probably 1 or 2 a year, and Actually, we spent more time today talking about it than we do normally because it isn't our priority. We don't go out of our way to do these things.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Yes, I agree with that, but it is timely because for our upcoming Springwater Swing, S is putting in a foursome, Tiny's putting in a foursome, and I believe Wasaga Beach
Yes.
is. So it's timely and something that's probably overdue for us to formalize.
So I think if everybody understands, I don't think we need to alter the policy because we've actually have a budgeted amount. So is everybody satisfied with retaining basically that council's event policy remain as the policy governing attendance at events like charitable golf tournaments? Is that good for everybody? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder to get the information reports, 10-2, 10-10, on the table, and then we can start pulling them. Councillor Coghlan. Councillor Austin. That the report items 10-2 through to 10-10 be received as information. We want to pull any of these for comment. Councillor Austin.
10.8, 10.9, 10.10?
Okay. So with Councillor Hannah.
10.3.
Any others? Okay, shall we receive? Yeah, let's see if we can deal with a question first. So I'll do them in order, so we'll go to 10.3. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. 10.3 relates to a neighbor dispute, and in the past, we've received a number of letters from a lawyer. Well, I know I got some emails anyway, criticizing us for not being supportive of one of the residents because the other resident happened to be a former member of council. So my question is that it was to deal a lot with drainage. And this here has, they've settled this by buying off some, selling off some property and changing the property line to accommodate where the fence was located, but there was complaints about the drainage. So my question to staff is, because of the settlement now, is those drainage concerns that we got criticized for in the past, and I think Perry might remember the NVCA was also involved in it, I believe, at one time. So as part of the settlement, are all those issues now looked after? There's nothing more for us to be concerned about?
I'll go to maybe CEO Brindley, but the court settlement had nothing to do with the township, I guess is one comment. So is there any further comments CEO Brindley has?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Hannah. The conveyance you're seeing here will hopefully satisfy those issues with respect to drainage, but I'll clarify that this is a civil matter between two owners. It wasn't, we were trying to assist both sides equally. People don't necessarily see it sometimes because they have their own interests in mind, and I respect that. But what we tried to do is help with what was a civil matter, and this hopefully will address the civil matter. There is another drainage matter dealing with the Lawson Road reconstruction that we're still corresponding back and forth with the owner on right now. But with respect to the back drainage, my hope is this will resolve that by those two neighbors working together.
Okay. Councillor Austin.
To comment on Councillor Hannah's question, my understanding of item 10.3 is that the boundary adjustment has nothing to do with drainage. It is simply that one neighbor erected a fence which was on the other neighbor's property, and so they're just that neighbor who, it could be said that that was a mistake on his part to build on, over the boundary line. So he's purchasing that section. The issue of drainage didn't come into it at all. I mean, that was a separate issue. This is simply property issue.
Yeah, actually, that's a very good point, Councillor Austin. Yeah, we should stay focused on the report. The report simply deals with the boundary adjustment. There's no discussion in the report on drainage. There may be a separate drainage issue, but it has nothing to do with this report, I guess would be the comment. So thank you for that comment. Okay. So I don't think there's any separate action on that one. So move on to 10.8, budget directions. And I think Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French, through you to Director of Finance. Under the section budget pressures, could you explain to me what is meant by space accommodation needs?
Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Austin, space accommodation needs is essentially looking at this building and providing for growth in this building for potentially new staff. As the township grows, we will likely be looking at additional staffing resources. So we'll be looking at, we have our famous bowling alley in the basement of this facility, and hence we'll be looking at trying to renovate, if you will, that area.
Thank you.
Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French. The dates proposed in November and December, they're, from what I understand, all in the afternoon. And I was curious if there would be an opportunity to maybe host one of them in the evening to allow members of the public who aren't able to attend on a Monday or Wednesday afternoon the opportunity to participate.
Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Coghlan. Again, it's a draft template, draft timeline in council's hands. If an evening session is warranted, then we can do that. Obviously, people can, who aren't able to attend during the day, could actually stream it as well. These will be streamed. But again, we're in council's hands as to whether or not an evening session is required.
Okay, other questions or comments on this? I guess I like the wording of the direction you're asking for. You're not kind of boilerplating a specific percentage, which is so, I assume you're starting with it's been very effective the last couple of years with what I call zero-based budgeting, and really looking at your particular needs and what that adds up to, and looking at what the revenues might be, and see if there is a difference, and then up to us to determine if there's tax increases or not.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, I wouldn't say it's exactly true definition of zero-based budgeting, but it's pretty close. Again, we don't like to assume, we don't want to try to aim for a 2% or a 3% like some other municipalities. We essentially look at what are our needs for the township in a specific year. And again, I think we all are under the impression that, yeah, we need to keep the percentage, if it is an increase, at a reasonable number. So, but again, with that said, we do try to look at what our needs are, and if the need is higher than a 1 or a 2 or a 3%, then that's what we'll bring forward to council, and we'll have to provide justification as to why it is at that level. So, but again, I have never typically come to council with a set target of 1 or 2%. So.
And I just want to clarify before I go to deputy. When I talk about zero-based budgeting, I'm not talking about zero. I'm talking about you start with a clean sheet, you use last year's as your reference and find out what you need. So I'm not suggesting, because I guess maybe your terminology is base budgeting, which is more maybe appropriate. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. I was going to update this on the county updates, but it's germane to what we're talking about here now. We had a day-long strategic plan, well, half a day long strategic planning session at the county, and they put out their high-level parameters for the 2018 budget, one of which was what has become a standard 2% tax levy increase. And I challenged that and said, based on the $4 million surplus that existed in 2016, a lot of it was due to some windfalls, but the surpluses have been between $3 and $4 million for the last several years. And because of the rate of inflation, I thought that 1% would be a better target to shoot for. And that, in fact, passed at the committee of whole meeting, but we lost a few people when we were faced with voting it once we adjourned to council. So that has been deferred to the next meeting of county to vote on that. So hopefully that will go through. I'm not sure at this point, but that has obviously an impact on the municipalities, because approximately 60% of the county tax level flows down into the municipalities.
Any other questions on this item? If not, we'll move on to 10.9. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to, I guess, again, Director Schmidt. Which staff members attended the workshops that were mentioned on page 3? There were sections 1, 2, 5, and 8 of that report on page 3, and you talked about staff members attending workshops to do with asset management. I'm just curious as to know which members of staff would be involved in those.
Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Austin. So there has been a number of staff that have gone to many different sessions, and they're offered by not just the Municipal Finance Officers Association, but they're offered through Ontario Good Roads and a number of other associations. So myself, I've attended. I know that our Director of Public Works has attended. I believe our Supervisor in Parks and Recreation has also attended. I believe our CIO has attended some high-level sessions on asset management as well. I know our Deputy Mayor has attended a number of sessions as well, although not necessarily township staff per se, if you will. But so those are some of the individuals that have attended. We will be looking at, we're in the process of recruiting for a manager of financial reporting and budgets. That individual will hopefully come on board with some background in asset management as well. So just to go on a little bit further about this regulation, though, it is proposing that asset management become much more comprehensive than what it is today. And so it is putting quite a bit of burden on the township, not just the township, but on municipalities in Ontario. And one of the items that I did ask that the clerk send out to all members of council this morning was the comments that were provided by the Municipal Finance Officers Association, essentially commenting back to the ministry on their thoughts as to where this should go. And I agree with most of their points. I think a regulation, maybe not at the degree that they're prescribing it to us or proposing it to us, is appropriate, but I think it would provide for some standardization, and I think we do need some standardization as it relates to asset management. So those are kind of my preliminary thoughts on this. We are working on the FCM grant application to try to obtain more funds to move forward with asset management. We're doing what we can at this stage, I think. So.
Any other questions on that? Okay, the last one was 1010. Councillor Austin.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor French. I was pleased with the report that Director Belcourt made on whether or not we should make mandatory helmet wearing at the arena, and he explained why it's not a good idea. But I just wanted to point out that for the listening audience, I really highly recommend that adults should set an example for kids when they go skating. I just want to be on record of saying that. I agree that the policy that's in place right now is the right way to go. There is a sign at the arena that highly recommends wearing helmets, and I really want to stress the importance of that. We've had head injuries in my family, and so I'm very conscious of the the value of helmets.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to verbal reports and updates. Maybe official plan update. Director Spagnol? No comment. And again, I think it probably is appropriate to remind anybody that is listening that one of the reasons there may not be an update is because we are waiting for final formulation of growth plan. So if you want to make a 30-second comment on that, it would be appropriate.
Thank you, Mayor French. The planning staff is looking at, as I've mentioned in previous council meetings, draft documents, so draft background studies, draft growth management strategies. Just recently, the growth plan update has come into effect. It came into effect on July 1st of this year. There's a significant number of changes that have been made to the growth plan, which will have an impact on those background studies and the growth management strategy. So really, it's a matter of reviewing the growth plan, trying to align the changes that have been made, and then reconcile with the changes that have been made, and trying to filter those into the work that's already been completed to date. That's currently where we're at with the official plan review process.
Thank you. And since you have the microphone, do you want to give us an economic development update?
Thank you, Mayor French. I think the key update is that a request for proposal has been issued for a small-scale marketing strategy to set the stage for a media campaign. That is now online, and we're just waiting for requests for interest related to that initiative.
Thank you. And county updates, maybe Deputy Mayor Allen. I know at our last meeting, I tabled a motion that was considered out of order, asking them to kind of just put a pause on the Environment Resource and Recovery Center because of the changes in the growth plan that are going to impact it by the county's own admission. It was called out of order, so it never hit the floor, but Deputy Mayor Allen asked some very good questions based on the previous minutes. And of course, as Deputy Mayor Allen mentioned, we're working on strategic plan going forward with some minor modifications and working on the budget. Maybe Deputy Mayor Allen, can you think of anything else?
No, we've covered it in both those things. We sort of anticipated that the motion might not make it to the floor, so I wanted to get on the floor in advance of that motion with some questions. There was fair attendance by residents, certainly affected by this, and that was good to see. Further to the meeting that we had here a couple of weeks ago on Monday, so it's good that they are continuing to bring up points, make their thoughts known, and we're expecting further information from the county in late summer with respect to finally starting to see some numbers with respect to this proposed Environmental Resource Recovery Center.
Thank you. So let's go for municipal updates. Anybody want to start here with all the excitement we've had over the last while? Councillor Hanna.
I always go first, sir, only because you like me more, I think. I'm only kidding, jeez. Okay, because the folks are sitting at home, the CEO may wish to comment. It's to do with our EA meetings. We're not canceling them because we're trying to delay anything. We're waiting for the report back from MOE on our environmental assessment report. If the CEO wants to comment on that or not, I just want to make sure the public are aware why we're not having those meetings.
And if you want to make a general comment, there was a timetable that we had anticipated, and obviously that timetable is kind of moving forward. So if you want to make some general comments, CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Councillor Hanna, you are correct. At this time, the meetings are just postponed. The draft environmental study report is still sitting with the Ministry of the Environment, and they're really looking closely at the document, and you can tell by the amount of time it's taking. And once we have the draft ESR coming back, we definitely will kick in those dates again. But for the time being, we're just on hold. And once the ESR is released back from the Ministry of the Environment and Climate Change, we'll essentially redo the schedule and get it back on track.
Thank you. And just a second question I have for the residents at home that have asked me, and I don't know the answer, but I'm suspicious that I do know it. It's to do with the Hull Board funds after our last council meeting where we council approved the governance model. And the question is, the funds that are existing in the hall boards currently, prior to that governance policy being approved, will those funds, will it be retroactive, or those current funds already, are at this time going to be amalgamated into one pot for all the hall boards?
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. I believe what we're doing is we're still looking through the financials to determine where each hall board sits, if you will. And then there will be a report coming back to council at some time in the future suggesting where the funds or how much funds would be set aside for each of those hall boards. This would be the funds that have been previously raised, if you will. On a go-forward basis, obviously, will be under the new governance, but the existing stuff will have to come back to council with a report and provide that information to you.
Thank you, because it is the previous funds that I'm being asked about, so thank you.
Councillor Coghlan?
Sorry, just clarity on that. So you're suggesting that funds raised within the communities are staying within the communities, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Coghlan, correct. You would have, back in May, we would have reported on the year-end results for each community hall, and some are in a surplus position, some are in a deficit position. However, that's overall, they're in those positions. We need to determine of those hall boards, how much of those funds are to go back to those hall boards to assist with seeding some of the events that take place on an annual basis. So.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. But our last council meeting, I did ask if the funds that were going to be generated from rentals of the community halls, would they be stay within those community halls, or would they be going into one central fund? And I believe, I recall the answer was they'd be going into a central fund. So if I'm wrong on that, please help me.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. The intent is that each of those hall boards will still be reporting internally on an individual basis. So for Midhurst, for example, whatever their facility rentals are, we'll still be reporting those separately. And those funds will still be shown for Midhurst to the extent that there's a surplus at the end of the year for Midhurst or any other hall board on a go-forward basis. Those funds would go into the township's general surplus, if you will. But we're also setting up new cost centers, if you will, for the special events so that those can be tracked separately and outside of the township's general funds, if you will, so that each hall board will know, hey, how much money do I have set aside for this special event? Do I have money to spend? Do I not? So on and so forth. So that's the intent. Not there yet, but that's the intent, I think.
Appreciate that. So the special events, as you're speaking to, that's the events that are raised by the hall board members, if you like, doing Autumn Fest, for example. But the rental funds will be going into a central pot, correct?
Correct.
Any other questions on, okay. Any other municipal updates? Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor French, I just wanted to mention about the great fireworks we had in Phelpson there. It was just, couldn't believe the people and the fireworks. It was the best yet. You were there and your wife and the deputy mayor, so, and the people came from all around. It was fantastic. I just want to switch gears here for a minute. I had a person bring this to my attention. This is out of our tax bill, which we just got. By the way, I just paid my taxes today. They weren't due to the 19th, so I'm in the good books. Remember that, right? But what they brought to my attention was that there's nothing on here about the directors of the departments and their phone numbers. So they had an issue, wanted to call about the roads, wanted to talk to Parks and Rec. There's nothing on here. And maybe in future ones, maybe we could put their phone numbers on that if they didn't mind. I know it kind of takes us out of the loop, but they can still forward it back to us. But I wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. This person was a deputy clerk at the county years ago, so she knows her way around. So this would be a very important thing to have. So I wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to comment on Councillor Ritchie's comment there, I believe we don't have the directors' lines, but we do have the departments where people can contact the different departments. In addition, on the website, and correct me if I'm wrong, clerk, I believe there is a contact page, and our information is on that contact page. To provide all of our information on there, we can look into it, but there is a section there that does provide contacts for the different departments. So I know it's not exactly what's being requested, but we're trying to meet you halfway, if you will.
Thank you. Any other municipal updates? Councillor Austin.
Yeah, I just want to point out that I'm sorry that I missed the events on July 1st, in particular in Elmvale, Vintage Days, put on by the BIA and the EDHS shared facility event at the Heritage Park. I trust that they were well attended and enjoyed by everyone. I'll be talking to people in the next few days to find out some more details.
And I want to comment on our extravagant Celebrate Springwater. It was fantastic. Everybody I've talked to enjoyed it. And not to be critical of some larger municipalities around us, but I understand our fireworks were much superior to a couple of municipalities that we're close to. I won't mention them, but it was a fantastic show. The entertainment was great. The kids and family and everybody, and we were talking about it earlier today. And hopefully we can come up with some plans and maybe build on this and make it an annual event, because it was well done, well executed, and quite honestly, credit to everybody that was involved, to our staff, everybody that made it possible, because it was a great, great event. And so just want to pass that on, because I know, there's been articles in that in the paper and on Facebook. So it was great, and everybody I've ran into really, really enjoyed it. And every time I go into, doesn't matter what area in the township, I was up in Allenville, people come up and say it was just fantastic. They came down and saw it. So it's something we have to build on. And actually, as it's not really a municipal update. Maybe it's a question. I was in Allenville this morning, and the only thing you weren't there for Heritage Days, but this year on the main street, they kind of huddled everybody down into the parking lot, and there was no activity on the street itself. And so I guess this is a question of maybe our CAO. When I was talking to a couple of people in the coffee shop out there, they said they checked a few weeks ago and they wanted to do just in front of stores and that without blocking the sidewalk. And it was suggested they couldn't, yet they did it last year. Can we maybe get clarification on policy? Are they able to use something in front of their store as long as they're not obviously impeding, the foot traffic? But because there seemed to be a mixed message. The comments that was made to me by two of the key organizers was they were told they couldn't do it. So anyway, I would just pass that off to staff to comment, because it was more interesting last year because of wandering down the street with a lot of activity on the street. But we should look into that, because it was a great event, and the event, Councillor Ritchie may want to comment, at the arena fundraising for Allenville District High School, the concert and that was well received at 2 o'clock. I think everybody was worried, where are the people? And then we just kept putting out chairs and chairs and chairs and chairs. And there was quite a few people who attended that, and it was very well done, and credit to the organizing committee. So if you want to make further comment on that, Councillor Ritchie, go ahead.
No, other than the fact it was planned to have it at Heritage Park, but due to the weather, they didn't chance it. They moved everything over to the arena, and everything was all set up there. And some of our Springwater staff, Tom McGinnis and them, were there to facilitate with the chairs and what have you, and it turned out to be an excellent event. So we all got our picture taken, so I'm sure we'll be seeing that. And it was very good. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Hanna.
Sorry, Mayor French, I'll be quick. Residents have spotted a thing called water hemlock. It's a very, very poisonous weed, apparently, on St. Vincent near the Willow Creek Bridge. CO Brindley's got staff looking into it to see if it is, in fact, that's what it is. I'm told that's what it is by the resident who seems to know, but apparently it's extremely poisonous, and you don't even have to eat it, apparently. You just have to touch it and it'll kill you. And farmers find it in their property, as I was telling Perry. when they find their livestock dead, they know they've got that weed. So Mr. Brindley's looking after it, I hope, and we'll get it fixed.
Yeah, and I guess if there's appropriate notice we need to post, we shall do that. CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor and Councillor Hannah. We're looking at it right now. We can't, because it's near water, we can't treat it with a chemical. So we'd have to look at actual, well, first of all, we're trying to make sure we identify it. As you know, certain species look like other things all the time, so we do want to make sure. We'll have to physically remove it. And similar to the warnings we put out with the giant hogweed, if this, once we verify it, and we will also put out notices as well to protect residents, because we, if anything's on our property, we will, you know, do our best to mitigate, but we can't control other people's properties. So, but that, as long as we're probably getting close to the giant hogweed season, so we're going to be on our lookout for the giant hogweed as well.
Okay, thank you. So move on to, is there any notices of motion from anyone? Okay, seeing none. Items for future consideration. Does anybody have any? Councillor Coghlan?
Thank you, Mayor French, and through you, Mayor French, already spoke with Director Belcourt, but that the September 6th staff report for the Doran Pavilion also include the option and costs associated with the alternative mat refrigeration that was spoke about, so to have that option on the report as well.
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Coghlan. That's my intention, is to provide those two options for council to consider.
Thank you. Any other items for future consideration? Actually, I know we talked about it, but I'm watching traffic leave here. And I know when we've had expected a lot of people at our council meetings, we put out our temporary signs. I just want to make sure it's on the record that we are going to install nice-looking permanent signs out there directing people to park somewhere else aside from our administrative center. It looks pretty good out there tonight, but could be very crowded. Okay, Councillor Coghlan?
Follow up to that too, we were speaking earlier in the golf meeting, 150 meeting, that the report that came forward to council about opening the north entrance or exit, is there an opportunity to have that come back to council?
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Your Worship. I could certainly resurrect that request for council to consider for next year. It certainly would alleviate a lot of the pressure going to the north on the one entrance that we have.
Okay. And I think, you know, probably the best place to bring it back to is the budget meeting and put it in there. But anyway, so no, I think that would be appropriate. Any other items for future consideration? Okay, just hold on. I just want to look at the list. I thought there was something on here. Oh, I know Councillor McConkie is not here, and this kind of follow-up to something Councillor Ritchie said a couple weeks ago. One of the things here, request organization of a session with David Phillips from Environment Canada to talk about climate change. I know Councillor Ritchie was at a presentation of Severn Sound with Gord Miller doing a presentation on climate change. It might be appropriate if staff contact Gord Miller, because he freelances in this, and kind of, Councillor Ritchie, if you want to comment briefly. I understand it was a very good presentation. I know it conflicted with some other schedules, but maybe you want to comment on that?
Mayor, thank you for bringing it to my attention. I would mention if they want to get a hold of Keith Sherman or Julie Cayley, at Severn Sound Environmental Association, they're the ones that Keith Sherman are the ones that had him come down from his home out of retirement to put this on, and to listen to this guy talking about climate change, it's stark reality, and of course we're seeing it firsthand with the wet weather that we're getting. But I would welcome if he would come. It would be well worth and publicizing it for people to come, because we need to hear what this guy has to say. It was well worth the visit. Thank you.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, either one of them, because I saw the David Phillip ones at the NVCA, and it was excellent too. But I think it is appropriate in the fall. It would be good if we had someone come and address and give us a perspective on long-term impacts of sustainability and resilience because of climate change. So I'd like to, because I know it's on our future consideration, but I'd like to see us do something in the fall if we can. Any other items? Okay, seeing none, we need a mover and a seconder for the bylaws. Coughlin, Allen? That the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. In the confirmatory bylaw, can I have a mover and a seconder? Ritchie, Coughlin. The bylaw 2017-059 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on July 5th, 2017, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment, a mover and a seconder, Austin and Allen. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:46 PM to meet again in a regular meeting on August 2nd. I just want to emphasize that. We only have one meeting in July and August, so our next meeting is not 2 weeks from now. It's August 2nd at 6:30 PM in the Council Chambers Administrative Center, Minising. All those in favor? Carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all for your attendance.